Oliver adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, the reflection of a man who had everything money could buy. Outside, the storm raged across Las Vegas, pouring relentless rain over the neon lights of the city that never slept. To him, the storm was nothing more than background noise, an inconvenience for those who weren't insulated by wealth. As he reached for a vintage bottle of wine from his cabinet, a sharp buzz interrupted the silence. It was the intercom. Mr. Oliver, the concierge's voice crackled through the speaker. "There's a woman in the lobby with a baby. She's asking for help." Oliver frowned, his hand hovering over the bottle. "Another sob story," he muttered under his breath. He wasn't heartless, but he had heard this kind of plea too many times. Desperation often came knocking, especially when people knew you had deep pockets. Still, something in the concierge's tone made him pause. "Put her on the screen," he said, pressing the monitor's button. The image that appeared was nothing short of striking. The woman stood clutching a bundle in her arms, a baby wrapped in what looked like a threadbare blanket. Her hair was soaked, sticking to her face, and her clothes were so drenched they clung to her frail frame. But it wasn't her disheveled appearance that caught Oliver's attention. It was her eyes, wide, desperate, yet holding a kind of defiant strength. They seemed to pierce right through the camera. "Send her up," Oliver said, almost surprising himself. Minutes later, the elevator chimed, and the woman appeared at the entrance of his penthouse. She looked even more fragile up close, her trembling hands clutching the baby tighter, as though afraid he'd change his mind. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice cracking. Oliver hesitated, scanning her. She was young, probably in her late 20s, but exhaustion made her look older. The baby let out a weak whimper, and the sound sent a strange pang through his chest. "There's a guest room down the hall," he said, motioning with a nod. "You can stay for the night. We'll sort this out tomorrow." She nodded, her gratitude evident but unspoken, as though she were too proud to say it out loud. As she disappeared down the corridor, Oliver poured himself that glass of wine, but it tasted bitter. He sat by the window, watching the rain lash against the city, but his mind was stuck on the woman and her child. Who was she? Why was she out in the middle of a storm? And why had she come here, of all places? Oliver wasn't a man who offered charity. He had built his empire from the ground up, clawing his way to success in a world where kindness was often mistaken for weakness. Yet something about Luna, her name, he'd learned from the concierge, had unsettled him. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Every creak of the penthouse, every distant cry of the baby down the hall, stirred memories Oliver had buried long ago. Memories of nights when he'd been the one desperate for shelter, for a hand to pull him out of the darkness. He hated those memories, and he hated that this woman, a stranger, had dragged them to the surface. Meanwhile, in the guest room, Luna rocked her baby to sleep. The room was larger than anything she'd ever known, the sheets softer than anything she could afford. But she couldn't relax. She knew the man in the other room had questions, and eventually, she'd have to answer them. But not tonight. Tonight, she just needed to keep her baby safe, even if it meant stepping into a lion's den. What neither of them realized was that this one act of kindness would unravel truths neither were ready to face. And by morning, everything they thought they knew would change forever. The storm had eased by morning, leaving Las Vegas draped in a hazy gray mist. Oliver woke early, a habit ingrained by years of discipline, but something felt different. The air in his penthouse carried an unfamiliar stillness. He walked into the kitchen to find Luna standing by the large floor-to-ceiling window, her baby cradled against her chest. She wasn't looking at the breathtaking view of the Strip. Her eyes were distant, lost in thought. Oliver cleared his throat. "Did you sleep well?" Luna turned sharply, startled, but quickly mastered discomfort. "As well as I could. Thank you. Oliver poured himself a cup of coffee, studying her in the morning light. She looked more fragile than she had the night before, her exhaustion etched into the lines of her face. The baby stirred, letting out a soft cry, and Luna instinctively rocked him, whispering soothing words. "What's your plan?" Oliver asked, his tone direct but not unkind. "My plan?" she echoed, as if the concept were foreign to her. "Yes," he said, setting his cup down. "You showed up here last night out of nowhere. Surely you have some idea of what you'll do next." Luna hesitated, her grip on the baby tightening. I just needed to get through the night. I didn't have anywhere else to go." Oliver frowned. He wasn't used to people without answers, without strategies. "No family? No friends? No one who can help?" Her expression hardened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of defiance. "If I had those things, I wouldn't have been standing in the rain with my son." Her words hit him harder than he expected, stirring something uncomfortably familiar. He decided to let it drop, for now. "I'll call someone to bring breakfast," he said, retreating into the safety of practicality. While waiting for the food to arrive, Oliver retreated to his office. Despite his efforts to focus on work, his thoughts kept drifting back to Luna. Something didn't add up. She was clearly educated. Her speech was measured, her posture upright, even in her disheveled state. But her presence in his penthouse didn't align with any logic he could grasp. Unable to resist his curiosity, Oliver picked up his phone and made a call to a private investigator he kept on retainer. "I need a background check," he said. "Her name is Luna. No last name yet, but she's in her late 20s, has a baby boy," and he paused, glancing out of his office. "She's desperate. Check hospitals, shelters, anything you can find." The investigator agreed, promising to update him soon. Meanwhile, in the guest room, Luna sat on the bed, her fingers trembling as she adjusted the baby's blanket. She had been careful not to reveal too much, but she knew Oliver wasn't the type to let things go. His sharp eyes had been scrutinizing her since she arrived, and she could feel the weight of his unspoken questions. Luna looked down at her son, tears threatening to spill. "We just need to hold on a little longer," she whispered. The knock on the door startled her, and Oliver entered with a tray of food. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting it down on the small table. "Thank you," Luna said quietly, her walls back up. As she ate, Oliver sat across from her, studying her again. "How long have you been on the streets?" Luna hesitated. "A while." "That's not an answer," he pressed. "Why does it matter?" she snapped, her composure cracking. "You gave us a place to sleep. That's all we needed." Oliver leaned back, his expression unreadable. "It matters because you're hiding something. And if I'm going to help you, I need to know the truth." Luna's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, charged with unspoken tension. Oliver decided not to push further, but his resolve to uncover her secrets grew stronger. Later that day, his investigator called back with preliminary findings. "I found something, but it's strange," the man said. "She doesn't seem to have a record for the last few years. It's like she disappeared. But before that, there's something you need to see. I'll send it to you now." Oliver's phone buzzed with a new message. He opened the attachment and froze. On the screen was a photo of Luna, clean, polished, and smiling. But what shocked him wasn't just the transformation. It was who she was standing next to. The man in the photo was someone Oliver recognized all too well. His heart raced as questions swirled in his mind. Who was Luna really, and why had she shown up at his door? Oliver couldn't take his eyes off the photo. Luna's transformation was startling. She looked polished, confident, and entirely different from the disheveled woman who had knocked on his door last night. But what truly unnerved him was the man standing beside her in the picture. A man he hadn't seen in years, someone who had once been a cornerstone of his life. Nathaniel Hart. Nathaniel had been Oliver's business partner when he was building his empire. They had shared not just profits, but secrets, victories, and betrayals. Their partnership had ended in bitter flames, with Nathaniel walking away after a deal gone wrong, a deal that had cost him everything. Oliver clenched his fists. What did Luna have to do with Nathaniel? He paced his office, replaying every interaction with her in his mind. Her guarded demeanor, the way she avoided eye contact, the baby she held as if her life depended on it. It all pointed to a woman carrying the weight of a hidden agenda. Unable to suppress his need for answers, Oliver stepped out of his office and found Luna sitting on the couch, her baby sleeping in her arms. She looked up as he entered, her eyes wary. "We need to talk," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Luna straightened, her grip on the baby tightening. "About what?" Oliver pulled out his phone and showed her the photo. Her face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "I have my ways," he said, his voice cold. "What I want to know is why you're in this photo with Nathaniel Hart, and why you came to me." Luna's lips parted, but no words came out. For a moment, she seemed to crumble under his gaze. Then she looked down at the baby, as if drawing strength from him. "I didn't come here because I wanted to," she said finally. "I came because I had no choice." "That's not an answer," Oliver said, his frustration boiling over. Luna exhaled shakily, her eyes filling with tears. "Nathaniel was my husband." The words hit Oliver like a punch to the gut. He stumbled back, staring at her in disbelief. "Husband?" "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "We were married for 3 years. He was everything to me. But when his partnership with you fell apart, our lives unraveled. He couldn't recover. The stress, the losses, they destroyed him." Oliver's jaw tightened. Nathaniel had blamed him for the fallout of their failed deal, but Oliver had always believed Nathaniel had been too reckless. Hearing the personal toll it had taken on him struck a chord he wasn't prepared to confront. "What happened to him?" Oliver asked, his voice quieter now. Luna looked away, her tears spilling over. "He died 2 years ago. Heart attack." The room fell silent. Oliver felt a pang of guilt, but he quickly buried it. "And the baby? He's Nathaniel's son," Luna interrupted. "Our son. And now he's all I have left." Oliver stared at the child, who was now sleeping peacefully in her arms. Nathaniel's son, a child born from a man he had once considered a brother. "Why come to me?" Oliver asked after a long pause. Luna met his gaze, her eyes fierce despite the tears. "Because Nathaniel always said you were the only one he ever trusted, even after everything. He told me that if I was ever in trouble, you'd help. I didn't believe him, but I had no other option." Oliver felt the weight of her words settle over him like a storm cloud. He didn't know whether to feel honored or furious. Nathaniel's faith in him, even after their fallout, was both humbling and haunting. He rubbed his temples, trying to process the flood of emotions. "What kind of trouble are you in?" Luna hesitated again, glancing at the baby. "It's complicated, but if you let us stay just a little longer, I'll explain everything." Oliver narrowed his eyes. "You'd better, because if you're lying to me, Luna, there will be consequences." Luna nodded, her expression unreadable. "I'm not lying. You'll see." As Oliver walked back to his office, he couldn't shake the feeling that Luna's story was just the tip of the iceberg. Whatever she was running from, it was far bigger than him or Nathaniel. And as he sat down, staring at the photo once more, a thought crept into his mind. What if helping her wasn't just about redemption for Nathaniel? What if this was Oliver's chance to rewrite his own past? The next morning, the light rain that had replaced the storm created a rare calm over Las Vegas. Oliver woke earlier than usual, his mind restless after the revelations from the night before. He had spent hours replaying Luna's words. The photo of her with Nathaniel burned into his thoughts. He wasn't a man to trust easily, and Luna's sudden appearance still felt like a puzzle missing too many pieces. Deciding to check on his unexpected guests, Oliver walked to the guest room. The door was slightly ajar, and he hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. The room was empty. His chest tightened. The bed was unmade. The baby's blanket discarded on the chair, and the faint scent of formula lingered in the air. For a second, he thought Luna had left, vanishing into the chaos of the city without a trace. But then he heard the faint sound of humming. Following the noise, Oliver found Luna in the kitchen. She was holding the baby in one arm, while stirring a pot on the stove with the other. It was such a domestic, almost surreal sight that it caught him off guard. "You're awake early," Oliver said, leaning against the doorway. Luna glanced at him, startled but composed. "I couldn't sleep." She set the spoon down and adjusted the baby, who was now wide-eyed and gurgling softly. "You should have stayed in bed," Oliver said, his tone softer than he intended. "I needed to do something," Luna replied, her voice steady. "It's been a while since I felt safe enough to just cook." Oliver didn't know how to respond to that, so he changed the subject. "What's his name?" he asked, nodding toward the baby. "Elliot," Luna said, smiling faintly as she looked down at him. Nathaniel picked the name. Oliver felt his throat tighten. The mention of Nathaniel still stirred a complex mix of guilt, resentment, and nostalgia. "Luna," he began, his voice firm, "if you want my help, I need full transparency. No more half-truths or evasions." Luna sighed, shifting Elliot to her other arm. "I know, and I meant what I said. I'll tell you everything, but it's not something I can explain in 5 minutes." Oliver's phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting the moment. He pulled it out to see a message from his private investigator. "New update on Luna Hart. Call me ASAP." Oliver's stomach tightened. "Excuse me for a moment," he said, stepping out onto the balcony for privacy. When the call connected, the investigator didn't waste time. "I dug deeper into Luna Hart's background, and it's complicated. I figured that much," Oliver said, glancing back toward the kitchen. "What did you find?" "There's a reason she disappeared from the system after Nathaniel's death," the investigator explained. "Turns out she's been running, from debt collectors mostly. Big debts Nathaniel left behind when he passed. But that's not the worst of it." Oliver's grip on the phone tightened. "Go on." "There's a man, a former associate of Nathaniel's. Name's Victor Stokes. He's been looking for her, and he's not the kind of guy you want to cross." Victor Stokes. The name rang a faint bell in Oliver's mind, though he couldn't immediately place it. Why is he after her? Unclear, but it's not just about the debts. Word is, he believes Luna has something of value, something Nathaniel left behind. I'd bet anything it has to do with the kid. Oliver felt a chill run down his spine. "The kid? Elliot?" "Possibly," the investigator said. "Whatever it is, Victor's desperate enough to track her to the ends of the earth. If she's staying with you, you're already involved." Oliver hung up, his mind racing. He returned to the kitchen, his face tense. Luna noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. Oliver didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned against the counter, his gaze fixed on her. "Who's Victor Stokes?" The color drained from Luna's face. She clutched Elliot closer to her chest. "How do you know that name?" "Because he's looking for you," Oliver said bluntly. "And according to my investigator, he's dangerous." "What are you telling me, Luna?" Luna swallowed hard, her shoulders slumping as though the weight of the world was pressing down on her. "Victor was one of Nathaniel's clients," she admitted. But he wasn't just a businessman, he was a loan shark. When Nathaniel's company collapsed, Victor lost millions. And when Nathaniel couldn't pay him back, her voice broke. Oliver pieced it together. Nathaniel promised him something else, didn't he? Something Victor believes you have now. Luna nodded, tears streaming down her face. It's not money, Oliver. It's something bigger. Something I can't let him have. Oliver's jaw clenched. He didn't know what Luna was hiding, but one thing was clear. Whatever Nathaniel had left behind, it had the power to destroy everything. The atmosphere in the penthouse grew heavier with each passing moment. Oliver couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. Luna's admission about Victor Stokes had raised more questions than answers, and the mention of something bigger left his curiosity burning. After a tense breakfast, Oliver excused himself, retreating to his office to dig deeper. If Victor Stokes was involved, this wasn't just about Luna. It could easily escalate into a threat against his own carefully guarded life. He called his investigator again, his tone sharp. I need more information on Victor Stokes and whatever Nathaniel might have promised him. Dig into Nathaniel's records, assets, anything unusual he might have left behind. And find out if Victor knows Luna is here. Understood, the investigator replied. I'll get back to you soon. As he hung up, Oliver opened his laptop and began scrolling through old files from his partnership with Nathaniel. Their years together had been a whirlwind of deals and ambition, but looking back, there were moments Nathaniel had seemed distracted, secretive even. One document caught his eye, a signed agreement from years ago, detailing a joint venture Nathaniel had insisted on managing alone. At the time, Oliver had trusted him, but now he saw it in a new light. The deal was with a private security firm, one tied to offshore accounts and anonymous investors. The more he dug, the clearer it became that Nathaniel had been hiding something long before their fallout. Suddenly, Oliver's phone buzzed again. It was his investigator. I found something, the man said, his tone urgent. Nathaniel had a private safe deposit box at a bank downtown. It was flagged in the system recently. Looks like Victor's people tried to access it. Oliver's pulse quickened. What's in it? No idea, but it's still secure. If Nathaniel left something for Luna, it's probably there. I'd suggest getting to it before Victor does. Oliver leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He couldn't let Luna face this alone, especially with a child involved. But he also couldn't ignore the risk. If Victor was already on her trail, accessing that safe deposit box could put a target on his back as well. Taking a deep breath, he left his office and found Luna sitting in the living room, her gaze distant as she rocked Elliot. We need to talk, he said, his voice firm but not unkind. Luna looked up, her eyes red from tears. What now? There's a safe deposit box Nathaniel left behind, Oliver said, sitting across from her. Victor's already tried to get to it, but it's still secure. Whatever's in that box might explain why he's hunting you. Luna's face paled. I don't know anything about a box. Are you sure? Oliver pressed. Luna shook her head, her voice trembling. Nathaniel didn't tell me everything. He wanted to protect me. He always said the less I knew, the safer I'd be. Oliver frowned. Well, it's not safe anymore. If Victor thinks you have what's in that box, he won't stop until he gets it. We need to find out what's inside. Luna hesitated, glancing at Elliot. I can't risk putting him in danger. Oliver's expression softened. You won't. I'll handle this. But I need you to trust me. For a long moment, Luna said nothing. Then, finally, she nodded. Later that afternoon, Oliver made his way to the downtown bank. He had called in a favor with a contact there to gain access to Nathaniel's safe deposit box. As he sat in the sterile, high-security vault, the bank manager handed him a small metal box. Here it is, Mr. West. the manager said, stepping back to give him privacy. Oliver opened the box with a mix of anticipation and dread. Inside, he found a single envelope, sealed and marked with Nathaniel's handwriting. For Luna. He stared at it for a moment before carefully breaking the seal. The envelope contained 2 items, a handwritten letter and a USB drive. The letter was brief but chilling. Luna, if you're reading this, it means I've failed to protect you and Elliot. The USB contains everything. Proof of Victor's crimes, his offshore accounts, and the leverage he used to control me. Use it wisely, but be careful. If this falls into the wrong hands, it could cost lives. Oliver's heart pounded as he held the USB drive. Nathaniel hadn't just been a victim of bad business decisions. He had been ensnared in something much darker. Returning to the penthouse, Oliver shared the letter and USB with Luna. Her hands trembled as she read Nathaniel's words, tears streaming down her face. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Oliver stared out the window, his jaw set. "We take this to the authorities. But first, we need to make sure you and Elliot are safe. Victor won't stop until he gets this. And now that I have it, he'll be coming for me too." As the weight of their situation sank in, a loud knock echoed through the penthouse. Both Oliver and Luna froze, their eyes locking. The storm wasn't over yet. The knock on the door was sharp and deliberate, each echo reverberating through the penthouse like a warning. Oliver froze for a split second, then motioned for Luna to stay put. "Go to the bedroom," he whispered urgently. "Lock the door and don't come out until I say." Luna didn't argue, clutching Elliot tightly. She hurried down the hallway, her footsteps barely audible. Oliver straightened his shoulders, taking a deep breath before walking to the door. He glanced at the security monitor, his gut tightening as he saw 2 men in dark suits standing on the other side. They looked professional, but their hardened expressions and tense postures screamed trouble. Oliver opened the door just enough to face them. "Can I help you?" One of the men stepped forward, his tone calm but icy. "Mr. West, we need to speak with you about Luna Hart." Oliver didn't flinch. "I don't know anyone by that name." The man smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's not waste time. We know she's here. Victor Stokes wants what she has, and you've put yourself in the middle of something dangerous by sheltering her." Oliver leaned against the doorframe, his expression cool. "If Victor has a problem, he can contact me directly. Until then, you're trespassing." The second man, larger and more imposing, stepped forward. "This isn't a negotiation. Either you hand her over, or things get messy." Oliver's jaw tightened. He knew better than to engage directly. Instead, he kept his demeanor calm. "Wait here." He closed the door and locked it, heading straight to his phone to call security. "Get to my floor now," he barked into the phone. "We have uninvited guests." As he ended the call, he heard a loud thud. The men were trying to force the door open. Oliver rushed to the living room, grabbed a metal fireplace poker, and waited. Within seconds, the door burst open, the men storming in with a calculated precision that made it clear this wasn't their first time intimidating someone. "Big mistake," Oliver muttered, gripping the poker tightly. The first man moved toward him, but Oliver swung the poker with surprising force, catching the intruder in the shoulder. The man stumbled back, cursing, while the second lunged at Oliver, grabbing his arm and pinning him against the wall. "Where is she?" the man growled. Oliver struggled but managed to wrench free, his elbow connecting with the man's ribs. He knew he couldn't hold them off for long, but he also knew he had to protect Luna and Elliot. Before he could make another move, the sound of the elevator dinging filled the room. A team of building security guards stormed in, weapons drawn. "Step away from Mr. West," one of the guards barked. The 2 intruders hesitated but quickly raised their hands, realizing they were outnumbered. "Call the police," Oliver instructed the head guard. These men broke in and assaulted me. The guards restrained the intruders, but as they were being led away, the first man turned to Oliver, his expression dark. You think this is over? He spat. Victor always gets what he wants. Once they were gone, Oliver locked the door again, his hands trembling as the adrenaline began to wear off. He walked to the bedroom, knocking softly. It's me, he said. The door opened slowly, and Luna peeked out, her face pale. Are they gone? For now, Oliver said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. But this isn't over. Luna sat on the edge of the bed, holding Elliot tightly. What do we do? Oliver ran a hand through his hair, pacing. Victor knows I have the USB now. That makes me a target too. We can't wait for him to strike again. We need to take the fight to him. Luna looked at him, fear and determination battling in her eyes. What does that mean? It means we use what Nathaniel left us, Oliver said firmly. The USB has everything we need to expose Victor. His accounts, his crimes, it's all there. If we can get this information to the authorities and the media, we can bring him down. Luna hesitated. But what if he retaliates? What if he hurts you or Elliot? Oliver knelt in front of her, his gaze steady. I won't let that happen. But the longer we wait, the more dangerous this gets. Nathaniel trusted me to protect you, and I won't let him or you down. Luna nodded slowly, her grip on Elliot loosening slightly. Okay, what do we do first? We need allies, Oliver said. People we can trust to handle this. I'll call my contact at the FBI. If anyone can bring Victor down, it's them. As he stood, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was from his investigator. Victor's men are mobilizing. You're running out of time. Oliver exhaled sharply, his resolve hardening. Stay here, he told Luna. Keep the doors locked. I'll handle this. As Oliver made his calls and prepared for the next move, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. The sun was setting over Las Vegas, casting a pale orange hue over the skyline. Inside the penthouse, Oliver sat at his desk, his phone in hand, waiting for an update from his contacts at the FBI. He had just finished making another round of calls, hoping to get ahead of Victor Stokes and his growing threat. Luna and Elliot were in the living room, keeping their distance while Oliver tried to make sense of the chaos spiraling around them. His thoughts kept circling back to Nathaniel, the man he had once called his closest friend. Nathaniel's betrayal, the secrecy, the debts, the strange promises made to Victor Stokes. Everything had come crashing down at once, and the weight of it felt suffocating. The truth Nathaniel had left behind, hidden in that USB drive, had the potential to destroy everything. But it was also their only weapon. Oliver's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but he answered quickly. Oliver West, he said, his tone guarded. Mr. West, it's Agent Taylor from the FBI. The voice on the other end replied. We've been monitoring Victor Stokes and his associates. We need to meet, and we need to meet now. We've uncovered something you need to see. Oliver's pulse quickened. Where? Meet us at the old casino warehouse on the outskirts of town, Agent Taylor said. Bring the USB. Oliver didn't hesitate. He grabbed the drive from his desk drawer, his mind racing. This was it. Whatever secrets Nathaniel had left behind, whatever Victor had been hiding, it was about to come to light. He hurried to the living room, where Luna was playing with Elliot. She looked up as Oliver approached, her expression filled with a mixture of concern and fear. What's happening? She asked softly, her voice trembling. I'm meeting with the FBI, Oliver said, his tone serious. It's time to bring this to an end. Luna stood up, her hands clutching Elliot tightly. I'm coming with you. Oliver shook his head. No, it's too dangerous. Stay here and lock the doors. I'll be back as soon as I can." Luna hesitated but nodded reluctantly. "Just be careful." "I will," Oliver promised, as he left the penthouse. His thoughts were consumed by the idea of facing Victor Stokes and the storm that was about to break. The drive to the old casino warehouse felt longer than it was. The air seemed thicker, heavier, as though the city itself knew that something monumental was about to unfold. When Oliver arrived, the FBI agents were already waiting, their cars parked discreetly in the shadows. He parked next to them and stepped out, the USB clutched tightly in his hand. Agent Taylor greeted him with a brisk handshake. "Good to see you, Mr. West. We don't have much time." He led Oliver into the warehouse, a vast, empty space filled with the remnants of old slot machines and gambling tables. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the cavernous building, and for a moment it felt like they were the only two people left in the world. "We've been tracking Victor Stokes for years," Agent Taylor said as they walked. "But what we found today, it's bigger than we thought. We've finally connected him to a series of unsolved disappearances over the past decade, and Nathaniel West's name keeps coming up." Oliver's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Agent Taylor led him to a table covered with files and photographs. "These are records of people who vanished under suspicious circumstances. But it wasn't just about money, Mr. West. Victor Stokes wasn't just running a loan shark operation. He was involved in something far darker: human trafficking, illegal gambling rings, and black market trade. Nathaniel was tangled up in all of it, but he was trying to get out." Oliver's mind raced. "You're saying Nathaniel knew?" "Not only did he know, he was trying to expose Stokes' operation," Agent Taylor said, his voice low. "But he got too close. That's why he disappeared. And Luna, she's more involved in this than she realizes. Stokes believed Nathaniel left her something that could bring him down for good." Oliver felt his heart drop into his stomach. "So, Luna, she's in danger because of Nathaniel's actions." Agent Taylor nodded grimly. "Exactly. Stokes doesn't care about the money. He wants to protect his empire. And if that means using Luna as leverage, he'll do whatever it takes to get to her." Oliver looked down at the USB drive in his hand, the weight of it now feeling like an anchor. Nathaniel had left them this information, but he had also put them in the crosshairs of a dangerous, unstoppable man. "What do we do now?" Oliver asked. Agent Taylor reached for the USB. "We run a final analysis. Once we decrypt this, we'll have everything we need to bring down Stokes. But until then, we need to get Luna and Elliot out of here. The more time they spend in this city, the more dangerous it gets." Oliver's mind raced. "No, Luna's not going anywhere. She stays with me. We finish this." Agent Taylor held up his hands. "I understand your commitment, but you're playing a dangerous game. If we don't act fast, Stokes will strike first. We're not talking about just criminal charges anymore. We're talking about survival." Oliver clenched his fists. "Then let's make sure he doesn't win." The FBI agent nodded. "Agreed, but we need to move fast. We'll begin the decryption process now. In the meantime, we'll keep an eye on Stokes' movements. We'll hit him hard and fast before he has a chance to react." Oliver took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision. Nathaniel had left him a chance to take down a dangerous empire, but it came at a price. His loyalty to Luna and Elliot was unwavering, but the cost of victory was mounting. As the warehouse lights flickered above them, Oliver knew that the next few hours would determine everything: the safety of the people he loved, the future of his own life, and the legacy of his former friend, Nathaniel West. The tension in the warehouse was palpable, every passing moment adding weight to the situation. Oliver stood near the table where the FBI agents were working feverishly to decrypt Nathaniel's USB. Agent Taylor was overseeing the process, his face illuminated by the glow of a computer screen, his expression a mixture of concentration and concern. Oliver couldn't sit still. His mind kept racing. Every second that passed, Victor Stokes was one step closer to finding them. He could feel it in the air, the heavy, suffocating sense that the storm was approaching. His thoughts drifted back to Luna and Elliot, still safer now. But for how long? He knew he couldn't wait any longer. "We're almost there," Agent Taylor said, breaking Oliver's thoughts. He looked up, meeting Taylor's gaze. "This is it. Once we decrypt the drive, we'll have everything we need to put Victor Stokes behind bars for good." But Oliver wasn't so sure. Nathaniel had been a man full of secrets, and even in death, those secrets seemed to be controlling everything. What if they found something even darker on that USB? Something that changed the way Oliver saw everything? Or worse, what if they were walking right into Victor's trap? Before he could voice his concerns, the door to the warehouse creaked open. Oliver's heart skipped a beat as he turned, hoping it was another FBI agent with an update. But it wasn't. Victor Stokes stepped into the room. The cold air that followed him seemed to freeze time itself. He was flanked by two of his men, tall, imposing figures who had seen it all. But it was Victor who commanded the room. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, his face as expressionless as a marble statue, his eyes locked on Oliver. "So, this is where the game ends," Victor said, his voice low but sharp. "You should have given me what I wanted, Oliver." Oliver's pulse spiked, his body instinctively tensing. "You're too late, Victor." Victor chuckled, his gaze flickering briefly to the table where the FBI agents were still working. "Am I? You think you can take me down with a USB drive? Do you really believe the FBI can stop me?" Oliver stepped forward, his voice steady, though his heart was racing. "You're finished, Victor. Everything you've done, everything you've built, it ends now." For a moment, there was silence. Then, Victor's lips curled into a smile. It wasn't a smile of victory. It was a smile of amusement, as though he already knew how this was going to play out. "I wouldn't be so sure," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You've made a mistake, Oliver. You think this is just about the money or the power. But you're wrong. Nathaniel knew that, and that's why he's dead." Oliver's chest tightened at the mention of Nathaniel's death. "What did you do to him?" Victor's smile faltered. Nathaniel was weak. He thought he could betray me and walk away clean. But there's no walking away from me, Oliver. There's no escape from what I've built. He should have known better. "Enough," Oliver snapped, taking a step forward. "You don't scare me." Victor's eyes flashed with something darker. "You should be scared. Because the truth is, Nathaniel didn't just hide something on that USB. He had the key to your destruction, Oliver. He knew you'd come for it. He knew you'd try to be the hero. But it's too late." Oliver's mind was reeling. What was Victor talking about? Had Nathaniel left something else on the drive? Something more dangerous than anyone had realized? "I don't care about your threats, Victor," Oliver said, trying to steady his breathing. "You've hurt enough people. It's time for you to pay for what you've done." Suddenly, the FBI agents at the table froze. They had been working on decrypting the USB, but now their eyes widened in disbelief. One of them quickly stood, motioning for Oliver to come over. "Mr. West, you need to see this," the agent said, his voice tinged with urgency. Oliver walked over, his eyes locked on the screen as the agent entered the final decryption command. The information began to load, and what appeared was more than just financial records or shady dealings. There was something much darker hidden in the files. Victor's face twisted with anger as he realized what was happening. He lunged forward, but one of the FBI agents quickly restrained him. "No, you can't," Victor began, but he was cut off as the file finished loading. Oliver's stomach turned as he read the details that unfolded before him. Nathaniel had discovered something Victor had been hiding for years, something that had far-reaching consequences. It wasn't just about money or human trafficking. It was about a covert operation, an illegal weapons trade that spanned continents, involving powerful political figures, governments, and global syndicates. And the worst part, Nathaniel had been in the process of collecting evidence to bring it all to light. The USB contained not just proof of Victor's crimes, but detailed records that implicated some of the most powerful people in the world. Victor had been protecting more than just himself. He had been protecting a global empire built on corruption, violence, and manipulation. Nathaniel had known too much, and that's why he had to be silenced. Oliver's hands clenched into fists as the weight of the discovery hit him. This isn't just about you, is it, Victor? This is bigger than anything we imagined. Victor sneered, his eyes wild with rage. You have no idea what you're up against. You'll never survive this. I'll make sure of it. Oliver turned to Agent Taylor, his voice steady but urgent. We need to get this information to the authorities. Now. We can't let him get away. But as Oliver spoke, he realized the truth. This wasn't just about exposing Victor Stokes anymore. This was a war, and the stakes were higher than he had ever anticipated. Nathaniel's final act of defiance had set off a chain reaction that could bring down an entire network of corruption. But that also meant there was no going back. Oliver knew that everything he had worked for, everything he had risked, had led to this moment. The final confrontation had begun,